Hello and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Jason Knight, and every week I'll be speaking to some of the brightest and best minds I can find in tech and product, digging into their stories, finding out what it is they do, and hoping they can share some of their wisdom and advice with me and with the rest of us. I'm here in Waterloo Station, and in tonight's episode, I Train, we imagine a fantastic future of intelligent trains. How will they make our commutes better? Will they sort the toilets out for us? Why are 10-year-olds worse to present to than CEOs? What is the best way to stack marshmallows? For answers to all these questions and more, all aboard. Destination, One Night in Product. And my guest today is Deepak Paramanand. Hello, Deepak.
Hello, Jason. Good evening.
Good evening. So Deepak is, as his LinkedIn says, an AI practitioner, a speaker, an educator, although I also believe this is, Deepak, your first podcast. So, Deepak, before we start, I have one question for you, which I think is probably going to be the most important question of this entire interview. I read on your LinkedIn a fascinating tale about how you built the tallest tower of marshmallows. And I wondered if you could talk to me a little bit about that and what that taught you about business practice and product delivery.
So you should know I am very, very competitive. If it's a spoon race involving the spoon and the lemon, I will win it. If it's a sack race involving a sack and people running in it, I will win it. I am extremely competitive, so naturally, any opportunity to beat and win against other people is a right opportunity for me to go in and win. So that particular thing, it was my first CSPO sort of a conference, and I was being taught what's a Scrum Certified Product Owner look like. I was with my colleague, my friend, and was another stranger. So naturally, I thought of it as an opportunity to win and show exactly how much everybody else, sucks at building marshmallow trees and whatnot. So so I built it, and what in our case we found was that people were using marshmallows. They had to essentially take a stick and stick a marshmallow and build the longest tower they could. And people thought linearly. They attached the base and then they built the tower on top. And I said, well, we are between two tables. There's a wedge in between. That stick, just make sure that the stick doesn't fall off and it can bear the weight of the marshmallow, which we did. And we stuck the stick between the two tables and the wedge. And lo and behold, we had the tallest marshmallow tower. So I think what I learned was if you have a mindset of winning, even distances between two tables can be the bridge you need to build a long, long marshmallow tower tree. So yeah, that's what I learned.
And did you get to eat the marshmallows afterwards as well? Is a very important question.
Yes, at that time I was not a vegan, so I could eat it. Looking back now, I will not eat it now, so I would pass it on to somebody else. Yes, I did manage to eat it then.
Sounds fantastic. So, back to more prosaic business matters. I understand at the moment that you are a product owner at Hitachi, which is a very large company, of course, which I'd like to talk about a bit about the largeness, so to speak, in a minute. But I know we can't talk too much about the specifics of what you're working on at the moment. But one of the things that I saw on your profile was that you are working basically on putting artificial intelligence into trains, which
Yes.
for me certainly felt like a fantastic, almost Thomas the Tank Engine come to life. Like we could finally be driving around in trains that are talking to us and having existential angst and stuff like that. I'm assuming that the AI in trains isn't quite like that, but if there is anything you could tell us about the types of problem you're trying to solve, even if you can't tell us how you're trying to solve them, would be really fascinated to because to me it's almost like AI in trains and sort of machine learning. It starts to feel a bit like sort of self-driving this or automated that. Is it that kind of thing, or is it something completely different? And again, I completely appreciate that you can't share all of the details
No,
because it's
I
still
mean
in
I
progress.
can't share. When the job offer came up, there was like it involves trains. And growing up in India, coming from a middle class background, we didn't have access to flights, so trains was my more frequent modes of commute. And I love trains. I don't know anybody who doesn't love trains because it affords the opportunity for you to be social. At the same time, look out of the window and see a whole new world without having to engage in it. So when this job offer came along, I was like, they're actually paying me money for this, which seemed a great gig to get involved into. So I got on here. And because the opportunities with Hitachi are so endless, I mean, I can't tell you details, but if just the amount of work they do in such diverse fields, I don't think reasonably I can retire because if I started doing AI in everything they do, I think my kid will join and he might retire from it. It's such a vast field. And so when they said trains, I said, well, let's think about trains. And before I interviewed, what I found was that they actually had already built a self-driving train for a mining company in Australia called Rio Tinto. It was a very specific use case. They had to drive the train from the mine to the yard, to the shed, and they had already achieved that. It was not easy. They had to prototype for several years to get that going, but they had already done that. And to me, that was fascinating because people generally just talk about it. For somebody to go ahead and actually make that happen, overcome so many odds, it was a big deal to me. And to me, work done actually speaks more than just the visionary stuff. So I was totally bought into that idea, and I was like, well, if that's what they've done, where else can we put AI? For example, you can help drivers drive better by detecting drowsiness, or if you've taken the Metropolitan line or any other underground line here and you're bored with the incessant delays, how can we use AI to not have delays for commuters? At the same time, how can you make trains more safe, more reliable, more secure? How can you make the fuel consumption better so that there's a far bigger advantage to trains than planes? So those are some of the areas that I interviewed for. Again, I said like we've still not, we have a very good idea of where we can apply AI to. With COVID, is definitely not helping. For example, a common use case is, are people sitting too close to each other? Should we be telling them that? Do you want to be announced in the train that, hey, you with the yellow jacket, don't sit too close to the lady in the red jacket? I don't think people would like that. But how do we still monitor that, inform to the customers the same way, and still maintain a high quality of service? So we are exploring a lot of things. The pandemic certainly has not helped, but the future is
Hmm.
bright. I do see trains as a very, very big medium of transport over and above planes, especially for the low carbon footprint they have. So all my work is just taking the commuter, person like myself or yourself who commutes on the train, and find out how we can make the train experience more pleasurable, more enjoyable, more safe and secure using AI. So that's the kind of the broad remit I have today.
Well, that's cool. And if I could put one feature request in your backlog, I think it would be to trying to use the power of AI to do something with the toilets on the trains because they're something
Mm.
that needs to be fixed.
You are right, sir. You know what? That's such a common request. I should maybe have like a public backlog and ask people to put in feature requests. And some people have asked to say, why can't I have a gym in the train? Right?
Yeah.
Why can't you tell me which carriage is full and why can't I just go and sit there? Like, yeah, absolutely right. Only question is, are we invading someone's privacy by giving me that information,
Mm.
or it's okay to say or not?
It feels like a very. I mean, I'm assuming that this is something that you're working on with for UK trains, or is it just trains in general, or like
Uh,
just
the, the,
more of
the
a
trains
conceptual
that
thing?
the trains that Hitachi manufactures, primarily that's the target we're going from. Because once we do that, then it's easier to sort of talk of it as a platform. So we're trying to
Hmm.
perfect in-house what we're doing, and then say
Okay.
it's a train, right? You have
Yeah,
sensor
yeah,
A,
yeah, yeah.
sensor B, and then can we implement it for everybody else?
So would you say it's still very R&D based at the moment? Because I was thinking that from a sort of a safety perspective, regulation perspective, that things like trains, I was looking at it thinking, well, if I'm product managing something to go onto trains, something that may have safety implications or any kind of knock on effects to the rest of the journey, that might be something that's quite heavily regulated. And
Yes,
I guess from what
absolutely.
you're saying, that might not be something that you've had to hit yet, but presumably would have to
Yeah, I
take care
will
of in the
hit that
future.
for sure. I'll hit that for sure. I'll tell you one thing. I was always frustrated. Why am I delayed so much on trains? So, Network Rail today in the UK regulates at what speed, in what sections of the train can the drivers drive at what speed. and that's primarily for security and safety reasons. For example, during rain, a particular section of the track may be so waterlogged, it may not be safe for the driver to drive that fast. So it is with good reason they set these things up. Now the question is, with AI, with heavy technology, can we overcome that? Obviously, the answer is yes. The question then becomes, when we do that, we have to, what you say, procure the network to
Hmm.
fit those sensors do the AI, which means for days on end, the network is shut down. So there are no trains, which people won't like either. So the question now becomes, how, with minimal amount of disruption, can we enable more safety and more security for customers without shutting down tracks or sections of the train permanently for days on end?
So, I mean, you touched on it before. I mean, Hitachi is obviously a very large company. I think I looked it up. Well, I definitely looked it up earlier. It's like 300,000 employees or something like that. How
Yeah.
have you found sort of being in such a large, presumably fairly traditional company because it's got a long history, right? So, how have you found that from a product management perspective? Do you have quite a lot of autonomy and sort of agile flexibility, or not really?
No, I do have a lot of flexibility. So I work for a thing called the accelerator within the company. Think
Ah,
of it as a startup with the backing of a big corporate. So that's a fantastic position to be in because I get to leverage the huge sales, business development, marketing cycle. At the same time, I get to build the product on best practices, on new ideas. It is so there is a bit of transition from the new to the old, but knowing that I can, my job, the way I put it is to say, can I prototype something fast enough for the big Hitachi sales and machinery, business of machinery to go put up in front of customers and get feedback? That is absolutely true, and I can get feedback within a week if I needed to, because there's such wide, deployments and exposure. It's very, very fast for me. Because if I were in a startup, I wouldn't have that much time or such speed in getting to customers. So there's definitely an advantage here. But obviously, there are challenges because they want to get. They're so widespread. They're literally in so many other businesses. So they want to sort of prototype a particular segment, say trades, and then go back and say, now that we've learned from trains, can we apply the same to elevators, to escalators, to ships, to heavy machinery, which Hitachi is very, very well known for? So some lines
hmm.
of businesses don't lend itself well to the fast and heavy technology. Some sectors do lend themselves to that very well. So, our group and my job particularly is to prototype fast enough, validate the customer, the industry fast enough, so that I can take the benefits of the big company that we have and validate the ideas with customers rapidly. So it's a very, very exciting time to be here. I must say, if Jim is my boss, is going to hear this someday. Hats off to him. I mean, it is a big deal, and he's helped us a lot in getting along and being able to do what we're doing without having to sort of have the burden of a big company on us.
Hmm. It's interesting because you were saying that about the sort of accelerator. I remembered the Innovator's Dilemma book by Clayton Christensen, which obviously talks a lot about the trouble that big firms have to kind of basically keep up with small, more agile, nimble firms. And one of the big things that they recommend or that he recommends is effectively just what you said. So it's almost like a company within a company and sort of letting that company do kind of what it wants because you're always going to get bogged down otherwise in the history. And again, Hitachi has great history, but it's not necessarily going to be something that serves you sort of day to day when you're trying to do something really radical, I guess. So it's really good that you've got that thing going.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a cliche, but you always want to work for the right boss. The job and the
Mm,
company are incidental. And
yeah.
I've had the pleasure of working with so many bosses in my 15 years of career. And, unless proven otherwise in the future to come, but touch wood, have a good boss, good children is head.
Hmm.
You have a great team who's very, very pumped up to do these exciting things. And so far, so good. Can't ask for something more right now.
Well, that's great. And I'm obviously really excited to find out what's going to happen with this AI in trains and when they're going to start doing this stuff. But um, have you got like a release plan in mind? Like,
Oh
is
yes,
there a
oh yes.
schedule?
Oh yes, definitely scheduled. Hoping to get something out by next year.
Okay.
Customers, we have a press release. We do the Amazon style work, having the press release ahead of time, talking to customers. So we're definitely working on something. Again, the pandemic has slowed us down massively
Yeah.
because if there are no people going on trains, it's harder to validate that at scale because you can't really say we tested this out in one carriage. It works for a carriage, means for works for the whole train, works for the whole network. You can't really say that. So you need to run these tests and this validation criteria across so many carriages, across so many trains for it to be useful. But with the pandemic, we're massively, massively handicapped by that. So we're hoping to, as we catch speed and people get back on trains, we can validate and come to market sooner with our solutions.
Oh, that's really cool. Looking back through your career, you've obviously spent a bit of time at Microsoft as well,
Yes, yes,
working on their Swift keyboard, which
yes.
I assume is one of those kind of swipey things that my fat fingers always fail to type on. Is that the type of keyboard that we're talking about?
Yes, it's for everybody. Fat fingers, thin fingers, no fingers. You just go in there. You say hello. First time you say hello, we'll say good morning because we think everybody in the world says hello, good morning. But then over a period of time, we personalize to you and say hello, how are you? And then we'll personalize to you and predict the next word for you. So it is a keyboard app. It's one of the top keyboard apps on the Play Store. Very very exciting time at Microsoft, and it is a fantastic team to work with.
Cool. And I see something around Microsoft Puppets.
Yes, yes.
So
So that was my work in computer vision. So the premise was because we are a keyboard, what kind of inputs can we facilitate to users to help them feel empowered in expressing themselves any way you can? Because with the typing medium, you can express yourself typing. With emoji, you can be creative, express your emotions. But as Android users, we've always felt the users giving us feedback that we don't feel as empowered as Apple users. So Samsung and Huawei have tried to address this with AR emoji and other things. So Puppets was our answer to Apple's Animoji experience, where you are able to express yourself and customize your expression to the audience. For example, you can say happy birthday to your kid, to your wife through a standard emoji or a GIF. But with this now, you can choose a panda, a cat, dog, and then customize your own personal greeting for someone. So it is your voice, but coming from a mouth of a panda. So a kid might find it very. My son loves me for it. He thinks I'm the coolest dad in the world, just because I can make panda and cats and all come to life. So it is definitely a very good calling card. It's a very easy and easy to explain product experience because otherwise, typically, as you know, product managers have a hard time telling people what product have I worked on and can I touch it and feel it. It's usually a very hard thing to say. So yeah, it was a fantastic working experience. It was my first computer vision product, a different kind of AI I had worked on. Very, very challenging product experience, but man, the learning curve was so, so good. I would not trade that in for anything else.
Oh, it sounds fantastic, and obviously it's really popular these days as well. I still remember the story at the beginning of the pandemic where some boss accidentally turned themselves into a potato in the Zoom call or something like that, and it just sounds like the ultimate expression of what you're talking about, except just accidental and probably never got over it. But yeah, on AI, I mean, in my day job, I'm working a lot with natural language processing and sort of lots of related fields around that. And I know you've done some of that work as well as the computer vision stuff and whatever secret things you're doing with your trains at the moment. I mean, I think from my perspective, it's fair to say that when you start getting to really heavy data science and artificial intelligence and machine learning and stuff like that, it starts to get a bit outside of my comfort zone with regards to actually how it works because I'm not a data scientist and I obviously rely on all of our expert data scientists to do that. But I'm still responsible for asking them to solve the problems in an interesting and useful way using the techniques that they know. How have you found kind of being the product lead for AI machine learning based products?
So I've actually benefited quite a lot by actually doing some of the NLP myself. So back in the day, even when I pitched for the NLP product, I actually coded my first hack idea in Python to show them it is how it works. And my basic pitch was, if I can do this, in 2 days of coding, if you employ a regular NLP engineer, imagine how much more that person can do. And all I had to demonstrate was I had to demonstrate that NLP can read documents, can highlight term frequencies, invest document frequencies, and even without opening a document, tell the story of a document to the person so that the immediate mundane tasks of reading, highlighting, annotating can be overcome very, very easily. And they bought it. And my emphasis was, I can do this. I'm not qualified to write production code. And my developer friends would, attest to that any day. If I can do this, imagine a proper NLP engineer with a proper education background can do so much more. And that
Mm.
actually, for me, was the turning point because I took it upon myself to explain myself, not just to presentations and prototypes, but to actually document that, write that piece of code out and say, this is what it is. Here is the input, here is the output, and here is the algorithm that was used to do this. That was very empowering for me. And because I had that confidence and I had hands on experience doing that, it helped me pitch my product very, very well. Again, NLP was a very standalone case. I'm not a very math person. Math and me probably wouldn't go out to a bar to drink. Absolutely not. But NLP seemed much more safer. At least the work I've done was less math. It was more sort of understanding, term frequency and document frequency, which I don't think is heavy math. I was able to understand that. And that was important to me because if I can explain it to myself, I can explain it to a 10-year-old, I can explain it to executives very well without having to, use a data scientist in the room for an example. So that started my journey. Once I was able to do that, I was able to build models of abstraction around how to do AI. For example, the way I look at it is traditional software, you have to give an input, you have to give an algorithm as an input, and you get the output on the other side. Whereas for AI systems, you give the input, you give some semblance of the output, and what you get is an algorithm. So just having that mindset change was a big deal for me. But once I was able to conceptualize that, I was able to make it real for myself. I was then able to say, okay, so now I understand it, in very, very concrete terms. Let me now build a business case around it. Let me build a product strategy, a roadmap around it, and test it out with people. Because as you know, in product, solutioning something is not what you and me do. We are here to qualify problems. So then I retrofit that to say, what problems can it solve? Is it an actual problem for someone? If it is, then what does it mean today? What is the journey coming out of it? And how can AI help reduce the journey, help customers save time, increase productivity, and how much are they willing to pay for it in return? So I was able to, take the solution I had, retrofit it to the problem space, and come up with the product idea. So I would say, for me at least, actually having coded that first bad code in Python in NLP was very, very important because I made stuff real for myself.
Mm. Yeah, I think for me, one of the things that you said there, which kind of chimes with me, is that obviously it's all about obviously solving a problem for a user. I mean, as product people, we're going to say that, but at the same time, things like AI and associated technologies they're just tools.
Yeah.
They're not. They're not. Yeah, I think it's really dangerous to fall in love with any solution. And obviously, there's a big buzz around AI and machine learning techniques, and there's obviously loads of really useful and cool kind of applications of those, and we should definitely embrace those, but not just fall in love with it because it sounds good or because you saw a medium.com article or something like that. So I'm also trying to work out of the 10-year-old and the execs that you were talking about, which one you're rating higher in the hierarchy,
So I'll
because
tell you this. I'll tell you this. And this is very fascinating for me to even find out. So I've spoken to executives. I've spoken at large conferences. I've spoken to industry professionals. I've spoken at London Business School. I've spoken to kids. Man, I tell you, hands down, kids are a very, very hard audience. They take no BS. They ask you the toughest questions and they will give it back to you straight back. So my sense is, if I'm able to make sense to a 10 to 12-year-old, I think that's the most brutal audience I get because executives at some time don't want to feel dumb by asking a tough question. Kids have no filter like that. So I did an AI sort of introduction workshop at a high school here. I was sweating. I was sweating by the end of it because they were asking me really tough questions, and it took all of the courage in me to give them a straight answer and not flip at them. So I would say kids definitely rate higher on the toughness chart compared to executives.
so There's a question that I like to refer to as the barbecue question, which I'm now going to reframe as the kid's birthday party question. So you're at a kid's birthday party, and one of these aforementioned tough children come up to you and ask you what you do. I mean, I'm assuming that they're probably, not 5, but maybe 10. How would you describe product management? Not the products that you manage, but product management as a concept to that 10-year-old child.
Lovely. My son asked me that. And by the way, my son and my wife don't have a very high opinion of what I do because for all that matters to them, I just keep
I,
talking a lot.
I, I hear that. Don't worry.
Like all you do is talk and you laugh a lot. I don't know what work you do. It's like, honey, as long as my boss thinks that way, I'm in trouble. He doesn't think that way, I'm fine. So, so here's what I would say. I would say if you were given a problem to solve, a, a smart person or a developer would actually go and solve it. But my job is to qualify the problem and say, is the problem, for you alone, or is this a problem for so many other people like you? And then I say, how many times do you have the same problem? Do you have it every day? Do you have it every month? And based on those two questions, I then answer to you saying, should I even go solve the problem or not? Because I'm going to answer back him and say, every time I commit to doing something, my time is taken away from something else, or each time I'm doing something, I'm not doing something else. So the cost of not doing something else could be much higher. So I would tell them my job is problem qualification, making sure that the problem is durable enough. It is for a large number of people, and then finally by solving that problem, I am reaching out to as much as of a large audience as I can, so that the time I spend solving that problem is equitable and useful for me, and I can derive value from doing that. That's what. Sorry, it's very wordy, but I would say problem problem qualification. I don't know a kid would understand problem qualification, but I had to break it down to say problem qualification means this.
Yeah, I think I get it, but you might want to get like a 12-year-old kind of copywriter or something to just sort of bring it down a little bit. But
Right.
I definitely get the concept.
No, I don't think I'm
Um,
invited to birthday parties. The second birthday party would be a tough invite, but if I work on it, maybe
yeah,
I'll get invited to the third birthday party.
yeah, that's the thing. I mean, product people are an unloved breed who never get invited to parties, is what we're taking from that. What kind of inspiring quote would you like to see on your tombstone when archaeologists dig you up in a few hundred years' time?
Given that he wasn't given a choice to be alive, he tried to make the best use of it.
I think that's probably half inspiring and half existential dread again, but I'll take it.
You caught me in the evening, Jason. Maybe early in the morning I'll be more optimistic. Late in the evening, this is the best I can come up with.
No, that's. I think trying your best is definitely a thing that I'm well on board with. So I think that maybe there'll be some dust on the first bit or something that can kind of make it seem more of a motivational poster. But definitely a good sentiment. What or who is your greatest hero, and why are they your greatest hero?
I think it's a combination of my teachers. And growing up as a kid, I wasn't a very bright person. Some will say I am not a bright person even now. I have no defeat against that. But I was eternally interested in doing many things. As I said, I do stand-up comedy. I volunteer. I teach meditation. I meditate when I get the chance. So I was very distracted as a child, trying to do many things. As a result of which, studying sort of became one other thing. So during that tough time, a lot of my teachers didn't judge me. They didn't think I was
Hmm.
dumb, or they didn't think I was distracted. They treated me with a lot of kindness and with a lot of patience, which in turn helped me grow. And I did pass out of college with good marks. But looking back now, had they judged me, had they put me in a negative place, I wouldn't have flourished. So looking back, I thank them for what they've done and try to imply the same kindness and the same ability to not judge with the people around me and help them flourish. So I would say the teachers back in the day who helped me flourish and become what I am, I think are the biggest heroes.
Yeah, that's very good. And obviously, we're always made by the people, especially when we're younger. We're made by the people that are around us. And I personally still sit there worrying about things that people said 30 years ago. So I definitely know. I definitely know where you're coming from there. Would you give any specific advice to any up and coming aspiring product managers, product professionals as they start to come into the game these days, either in AI or just in general?
I would say start by doing. I mean, I tell them the most important skill I have, the real skill I have is SQL. You throw me a database, I can write SQL, I can do depth by SQL, and I can bring brilliant insights from it. That's the one real skill you can have from me that you can't take away. But because I had that so well, I was able to build on that and build bigger and bigger and newer abstractions for the world as I went along. And that helped me immensely. So I would say anybody trying to get into data or AI, start with the basics, start with the BI, SQL, abstract the data, learn from the data, and sort of try to solve a business problem with it. Because as I said, it's very easy to go solve it. Making sure it's a problem worth solving, you can solve the problem for many people, helps you scale. So that identification of problem and qualifying the problem are important skills to have. So yeah, that's the only advice I've had. That's the only real advice that has helped me. People ask me how to get into AI. I was like, well, do BI really well. Explain the heck out of the data you have already to SQL and whatnot, and that will give you a very good foundation of building AI and building AI products.
Cool. No, it sounds inspirational. Well, I know we're at time, and I don't want to keep you from your family because I know that they want to go to the park. So thanks very much for joining me. It's been a really interesting conversation, and hopefully be interesting for the multitude of listeners that we're inevitably going to get once this goes out. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you or chat to you?
So I'm on LinkedIn, as you know. I'm shortly coming up with my own YouTube channel called 1% Smarter, which basically says helps you become 1% smarter every day, which is basically how I got to be where I got to be. So look out for that. It will be people like Jason, very smart people who have done the small little things throughout their life to become who they are and become successful. So you'll see that shortly. But yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, and as I keep telling people, with my first name last name combination, I'm the only guy in Google you'll find. So I am going nowhere. I am right there.
That's cool, and I'll obviously put the details in the description of the podcast once we put it up. Well, thank you very much for your time. It's been a fascinating chat, and I wish you all the success in creating your robot trains. And let's keep in touch.
Yes, surely. Thanks, Jason. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Keep in touch. Yeah.
Good night. Bye.
Good night.
Thanks for listening. As ever, it's my pleasure to have your attention. If you'd like to come onto the show to talk about your experiences, please feel free to pop to the website, onenightinproduct.com, click the link, leave your details, and we'll be in touch. Otherwise, of course, I'd appreciate it if you shared, followed, or liked this podcast on the app of your choice. Tell your friends about me, and please come back for more quality content on One Night in Product.